2023 was an eventful year for me in terms of reading manga. As a matter of fact, I'd say it's the first year where I really sat down and read stuff. I've never really liked reading growing up, mainly being interested in sports and video games. I probably read the most amount of books in a year that I ever have in 2023. In total, I read 35 different manga, 27 of which I completed. The other 8 are ongoing, or in the case of a select few, I dropped them. On the screen is my full reading list and what I rate each of the manga. Don't forget to pause if you're interested in what I read and rated various manga. It's color coded. Red means I rated it a 1 to 4, 5 to 7 is orange, and green is an 8 or higher. If you're paying attention to the list, you'll notice there aren't big name manga within it. You won't see things like Jujutsu Kaisen, Blue Lock, Chainsaw Man, or One Piece. That's because I prefer watching anime over reading manga. Reading manga can be great, but overall watching is far more enjoyable for me. For these massive titles I mentioned, I'm not worried that they will get an anime release because of their popularity. Just like how I am often on the hunt for underrated anime, I like to give lesser known titles a chance in manga as well. That is where my focus lies. So much of the year I tried looking for short completed works that seemed interesting to me. Before I get into my top 5 manga of 2023, I wanted to provide some honorable mentions. Manga that were really good but didn't quite make the top 5 cut. So, some manga recommendations. If you're looking for a zombie apocalypse work with some crazy drawings and an interesting plot, check out Fort of Apocalypse. It follows 4 high schoolers serving varying sentences at a juvenile detention center while a zombie apocalypse occurs. They must try to survive and find a cure. It is a completed work that doesn't take too long to read, coming in at 49 chapters. I gave it an 8 out of 10. Next honorable mention is Tetsugaku Lettra. It's a story of moving on in your life after experiencing hardships. It encourages you to keep pushing forward in order to become the best version of yourself. This is quite a weird manga since the MC is a dude wearing bright red women's dancing shoes throughout much of it. It's an interesting story and the characters were very fleshed out and felt real, making it a fantastic read. I gave it an 8.5 out of 10. The final manga I'll include in honorable mentions in 2023 is Heads. It's a manga about a man who gets a brain transplant after being shot in the head. With half his brain no longer being his, he slowly starts changing for the worse. He now must find out who the other half of his brain used to belong to. It's a crazy psychological work that I gave a 7.5 out of 10. Finally, it's time to talk about the top 5 manga I read in 2023. Coming in at 5th for the best manga I read in 2023 is Hiraeth, The End of the Journey. Mika, a human, is struggling after the loss of her best friend. She's struggling to find meaning in her life, so much so that right at the beginning of the manga, we see her throwing herself in front of a truck, hoping to die. She's saved by the immortal Hibino, who's acting as a traveling companion for the god Hani. Hiraeth follows the journey of these 3 people, a god, an immortal man, and a human girl traveling to Yomi, the place where the souls of humans and gods reside. Each person has their reasons for this journey. Hani is traveling to Yomi since her life is coming to an end. Hibino is sick of being an immortal, having to see people suffer and friends come and go. He hopes that his life will also end when the journey to Yomi is complete. Mika decides to tag along on their journey, hoping to be reunited with her friend. This story includes very heavy themes of death and grief. Throughout the manga, we see various stories of people's lives and what they've had to experience and suffer through. People have vastly different views on life and death. It encourages people to live life to the fullest and don't have any regrets, because life is short. Don't put things off to tomorrow because it could potentially never come. The art for the manga is beautiful, among the best that I've seen. At only 17 chapters, it's very short, making it very easy to read in a single sitting. I give Hiraeth, The End of the Journey, an 8.75 out of 10. The 4th best manga I read in 2023 is Bastard. It is a manhwa, not a manga. Bastard encompasses so many different genres, some of them being a horror, romance, and psychological work. It's a story that gets crazier and crazier as it goes on, making you want to read until it is finished. The main character Jin and his father have an interesting relationship, to say the least. Jin is a scrawny, quiet, and weak boy who has a glass eye and artificial heart valves. He is ruthlessly bullied at his school, however he doesn't fear them. No, there's something much worse that he has to deal with, and it's at his home. The fact that his father is a deranged serial killer, and Jin helps him out with his killings. This has been going on for years. After being shown kindness by a girl named Kyun, who he falls in love with, he finally makes a decision. Jin decides to stop being a coward and take action, becoming stronger, smarter, and much more cunning. All of this is necessary to keep her safe from the clutches of his old man. You find yourself rooting for Jin even though he isn't without his fair share of guilt. Bastard does a great job setting the mood and showcasing Jin's father, Dong-su's evilness. It has a rather simplistic but very effective art style. I give Bastard a 9 out of 10. In third place for best manga I read in 2023 is It Invaded #BreakBroken. This manga is a sequel to the anime It Invaded. If you decide to read this, then in order to understand much of what is going on, you need to watch the anime first, since it is an anime original idea. To give a brief introduction into the series, It Invaded follows a brilliant detective, Akihito. With the help of a highly advanced system named the Mizuhaname, he is able to enter a murderer's unconscious mind. By doing this, they can find the identity of the culprit. Since this system has incredible power, one can assume that it's kept a secret under ridiculous surveillance. Obviously, there are people and groups that are interested in using it for their own purposes. It's a fantastic anime that I gave a 9 out of 10 for. If you haven't watched it already, please go now. I'd say unless you thoroughly loved It Invaded like I did, reading the manga is unfortunately not worth your time. It doesn't give a proper ending to the series. As a matter of fact, it continues it with more planned for the future. Unfortunately, there's no signs of the series continuing, and it ends in an unsatisfactory spot with many questions that still need answering. This manga is a sequel to the series taking place after the events of the anime. In the 14 chapters, Akihito, Hondomachi, and one secret brilliant detective are tasked with finding one last murderer. But so many other things happen outside of the Mizuhaname. I love the continuation of the story. This manga introduces an interesting concept that could be explored if It Invaded continued, operating on the basis that the Mizuhaname is still a secret and must remain as such, since it's essentially a weapon. If the Mizuhaname system can jump into a person's unconscious mind, can it do other things as well? That's answered by the manga's end. Yes, as a matter of fact, it can, and other organizations are interested in its potential. The system is even capable of time travel, although since this manga is short, we do not know the full extent of its power, nor what these organizations want with it. Shadowy figures have Kira, the organization responsible for keeping the Mizuhaname safe, seemingly in the palm of their hand, always being one step ahead of them. Showcasing this power is proof that the Mizuhaname system is extremely coveted and needs to be protected. If left in the wrong hands, something bad can happen. In this manga, you can expect a cult, a much more satisfactory and mysterious evil force with Orochi compared to John Walker, and a very interesting Idwell that is solved with the help of a song. I love that this series was expanded upon, and I really hope it's picked back up and continued in the future. I give It Invaded #BreakBroken a 9 out of 10. At the number 2 slot and the first of 2 manga that I rated a 10 out of 10 in 2023 is Bibliomania. Bibliomania has an extremely unique plot following a young girl named Alice. She finds herself in a manor with the number 431 on the back of her hand. A serpent greets her and claims a party will shortly start taking place. Alice is told as long as she stays in her room, every wish of hers will come true. However, her desire is to leave, to return to the real world. Despite being warned that her body will rot, leading to her death if she leaves her room, she embarks on a journey going from room 431 to room 0 in descending order. As she travels, the serpent is constantly trying to persuade her to return to her room. The journey is long and painful as she meets various characters living in their own fantasy world. People dealing with bullies, severe medical conditions, broken families, but enjoying their time in their rooms. Alice deals with these broken individuals in every single room. These people live in denial, wanting to stay where they are safe and have everything they desire. They are living escapist fantasies. There's an interesting and great twist towards the end that I don't want to ruin if you haven't read it yet. All I will say is that it revolves around happiness, well, a lack thereof since it's impossible to achieve. If you know, you know. Combine an extremely interesting story with incredibly detailed illustrations, and at only 12 chapters long, Bibliomania is a must-read manga. My rating for it is a 10 out of 10. The number 1 manga I read in 2023 is also the first manga I read at the start of the year. I sold my life for 10,000 yen per year. It has such an interesting premise and talks about several topics. Kusunoki is a 20-year-old man who's helpless and struggling, especially for money. This is noticed by an old man who points him in the direction of a store where you can supposedly sell various things, such as your time, health, and even your own lifespan. This intrigues the main character, and since he's so desperate, he gives it a chance. Upon arriving, he's willing to give away his lifespan, getting evaluated to see how much his life is truly worth. Factors that determine a person's life value include things such as how happy a life they will lead, how many dreams they will achieve, how happy it makes others, and how many contributions to society they will make. Now you might be thinking, hey, he's a young, healthy 20-year-old man with his entire life ahead of him. His life has to be worth a pretty penny, right? Waiting for the total, he gives a low ball estimate, expecting at least 3 billion yen, so roughly $20 million. Well, if you paid attention to the title, he obviously got nowhere near that amount. His amount totals to 10,000 yen per year, or around $80 USD, for the next 30 years. He gets the bare minimum for his life. Imagine being told you don't do anything with your life. Growing up, he had high expectations for himself, and others thought so too. He expected himself to be rich and successful, but being told he accomplishes nothing is the final nail in the coffin for him. He's lost everything. Kusunoki, who now has no friends, money, expectations, or hobbies, signs the remainder of his life away, essentially giving up. He's given 3 months left to live, and is provided with a female observer, Miyagi, who will study and chronicle what he was like in his final days. She's also there to make sure he doesn't cause trouble or hurt others. How will Kusunoki spend his remaining days? He decides to live it to the fullest, doing a complete 180 with how he normally carried himself at the beginning. He has to come to terms with past regrets and relationships that he never cared about before. He's the reason why his life isn't worth anything. His self-destructive, uncaring attitude ruined his own life. The manga I Sold My Life for 10,000 Yen per year is a great representation of how harsh the world we live in truly is at times. It explores themes like depression, happiness, and the value of life in general. It also tackles other things such as us having the expectation and hope that eventually something good will happen to you. There's expectations thrown on us by others that we are to achieve certain goals. What happens if they aren't met? How will others treat you? What is happiness to us, and what gives life meaning? The answers to these questions vary from person to person, but at some point they need to and will be answered. I Sold My Life for 10,000 Yen per year has perfect pacing and development. To date, this is the best manga I have read. I give it a perfect score of a 10 out of 10. That's my top 5 list for the best manga I read in 2023. Tell me what you think of any of the manga I mentioned in the comments. Thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video.